What happens when the enforcer of the bloodline sets his sights on championship gold? What happens when calculated brutality collides with smooth confidence? What happens when Solo Sikoa decides that Carmelo Hayes has something he wants, and he's willing to break every bone in his body to take it? Ladies and gentlemen, what we're about to dive into isn't just another wrestling angle. This is a collision course that's been building in the shadows, a storm that's been brewing beneath the surface of WWE programming, and when it finally erupted, it sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling world. Solo Sikoa, the silent assassin, the man who communicates with his fists and speaks volumes with his presence, has turned his attention to the United States Championship, and Carmelo Hayes, the self-proclaimed him of WWE, found himself directly in the crosshairs of one of the most dangerous men in professional wrestling today. Now, before we get into the absolute chaos that unfolded, before we break down every devastating moment of this attack, we need to understand the landscape. We need to understand who these two men are, what drives them, and why this confrontation was always inevitable. Because in wrestling, nothing happens by accident. Every rivalry has roots, every attack has motivation, and every championship pursuit tells a story about hunger, ambition, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to reach the top. Let's start with Carmelo Hayes. This man walked into WWE with swagger that most wrestlers spend years trying to develop. He carries himself like he's already won before the bell even rings. The gold chains, the confident smirk, the way he moves in that ring like he's performing a symphony of athleticism. Carmelo Hayes isn't just talented, he's aware of his talent, and that confidence has taken him to the top of the mountain as United States champion. When he holds that title, he doesn't just wear it, he embodies it. He makes you believe that the championship was made specifically for him. His matches are clinic performances, springboard moves that defy physics, counters that leave you wondering how someone's brain can process wrestling that fast. He's beaten everyone put in front of him. He's turned back challengers with that devastating nothing but net, and he's made it clear that he believes he's the present and the future of WWE. But here's the thing about confidence, it can sometimes blind you to the dangers lurking in the shadows. And Solo Sikoa? He's been lurking. He's been watching. He's been calculating. Solo Sikoa represents something entirely different in the WWE landscape. He's not about flash. He's not about social media promos or witty catchphrases. He's about dominance. Pure, unadulterated, bone-crushing dominance. As the enforcer of the bloodline, Solo learned from the best. He stood alongside Roman Reigns during the Tribal Chief's historic championship reign. He witnessed firsthand what it takes to maintain power in WWE. He executed the will of the bloodline with surgical precision, taking out anyone who dared challenge their authority. The Samoan spike became one of the most feared finishing moves in all of wrestling, because when Solo hits you with it, you don't just go down, you stay down. You question your life choices. You reconsider your career path. But something shifted. The bloodline fractured. Roman's reign ended. The family's grip on WWE loosened, and Solo found himself at a crossroads. He could fade into the background, or he could step forward and claim his own legacy. And if you know anything about the Anoa'i family, you know that fading away has never been an option. They're warriors. They're conquerors. And Solo Sikoa decided it was time to conquer on his own terms. The United States Championship became his target, not because it was the only option available, but because it represents something significant. It's a workhorse title, a championship that demands you show up every week and prove you're the toughest competitor in the company. It's held by someone who embodies everything Solo isn't, someone flashy and vocal and beloved by the crowd for their charisma. And maybe, just maybe, Solo saw in Carmelo Hayes a reflection of everything he wanted to destroy. The cockiness, the showmanship, the belief that talent alone is enough to survive in WWE. Solo was about to teach Carmelo a very painful lesson: talent gets you to the dance, but toughness determines whether you leave in one piece. The attack didn't come out of nowhere, even though it felt that way to Carmelo. There had been glances, moments on backstage segments where Solo's eyes would linger on that United States Championship just a little too long. Commentary had started planting seeds, asking questions about who might be next to challenge Hayes. But in typical Solo fashion, he didn't cut promos. He didn't tweet his intentions. He simply waited for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment came on an episode of SmackDown that nobody will ever forget. Carmelo Hayes had just finished a match, a successful title defense against a game opponent who pushed him to his limits but ultimately fell to the United States champion's superior skill. The crowd was on their feet. Carmelo was celebrating in the ring, the championship held high above his head, the lights gleaming off the gold plate. He was soaking in the adulation, playing to every section of the arena, giving them that $1,000,000 smile that's become his trademark. His music was blaring. The announce team was putting him over huge, talking about how impressive his championship reign has been, how he's elevated the United States Championship to must-see status. And then the music cut. The arena went dark for just a split second, and when the lights came back up, Solo Sikoa was standing at the top of the entrance ramp. The crowd's reaction was instantaneous. That collective gasp that only happens when something unexpected and dangerous enters the equation. Carmelo's expression in the ring shifted. The smile didn't disappear completely, but you could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He knew who Solo Sikoa was. Everyone knows who Solo Sikoa is. But Carmelo Hayes doesn't back down from anyone, that's not his style. So instead of showing fear, he beckons Solo forward. "Come on then. Step into my ring. See what happens." Solo started walking. Not rushing, not sprinting, just that methodical, purposeful stride that makes him so terrifying. Each step carried weight. Each movement was deliberate. He wasn't coming to talk. The look on his face made that abundantly clear. This was a man on a mission, and that mission was destruction. Carmelo dropped the title and got into his stance, ready for whatever was about to happen. The crowd was electric now, sensing that they were about to witness something significant. The announce team was scrambling, trying to understand what was happening. Had Solo officially declared himself a challenger? Was this going to be an impromptu match? What were we about to see? Solo reached the ring and paused at the apron, staring directly at Carmelo. For a moment, everything was still. Two competitors, two completely different approaches to wrestling, face to face with championship gold between them. You could feel the tension radiating through the arena. And then Solo stepped through the ropes. Carmelo didn't wait. He struck first, launching himself at Solo with a flurry of strikes, trying to use his speed advantage to overwhelm the bigger man. Punches, kicks, forearms, everything in his arsenal aimed at keeping Solo off balance. And for a few seconds, it actually seemed to be working. Carmelo was moving, staying mobile, hitting and circling away before Solo could grab him. But then Solo caught him. One hand shot out and grabbed Carmelo by the throat mid-strike, stopping his momentum completely. The crowd erupted. Carmelo's eyes went wide as Solo lifted him effortlessly and drove him into the mat with a thunderous chokeslam that shook the ring. The impact echoed through the arena. Carmelo bounced off the canvas, and before he could even process what had just happened, Solo was on him again. What followed wasn't a match. It wasn't even a fight. It was a systematic dismantling. Solo picked Carmelo up and launched him into the corner with such force that Hayes hit the turnbuckles and crumpled to the mat. Solo dragged him back to his feet and delivered a headbutt that would have knocked out a lesser man. Carmelo was reeling, stumbling, trying desperately to create distance, but there was nowhere to go. Solo was methodical, taking his time, making sure every shot counted. A spinning back elbow caught Carmelo flush on the jaw. A Samoan drop planted him in the center of the ring. The announce team was in chaos. They were calling for officials, wondering where the locker room was, questioning why nobody was coming out to stop this assault. But deep down, they knew the answer. Nobody wanted to get between Solo Sikoa and his target. Nobody wanted to be the next victim. Carmelo showed incredible heart, trying to fight back, trying to use the ropes to pull himself up, trying to mount some kind of offense. At one point, he managed to hit a desperate superkick that actually staggered Solo, and for just a moment, you could see hope flash across Carmelo's face. Maybe he could turn this around. Maybe his resilience would see him through. Solo shook off the superkick like it was nothing and responded with a devastating lariat that turned Carmelo inside out. The champion flipped completely through the air and crashed to the mat in a heap. And that's when Solo made his statement. He picked up the United States Championship. The crowd was at a fever pitch now, booing, cheering, reacting to every movement. Solo held the title high, staring down at Carmelo's broken body, and the message was crystal clear. This championship belongs to me. I'm taking what I want, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. But Solo wasn't finished. Oh no, he was just getting started. He positioned Carmelo for the Samoan spike. The crowd knew what was coming. The announce team was pleading for someone to intervene. Carmelo was barely conscious, defenseless, vulnerable. And Solo drove his thumb into Carmelo's throat with that devastating finishing move. Hayes convulsed and went limp, completely knocked out from the impact. Officials finally flooded the ring, but the damage was done. Solo stood tall over the fallen champion, the United States Championship draped over his shoulder like it already belonged to him. He didn't need to say a word. His actions had spoken volumes. He exited the ring as calmly as he'd entered, walking back up the ramp while medical personnel attended to Carmelo Hayes. The aftermath was chaos. Trainers were checking on Carmelo, who was still laid out in the ring. The commentary team was trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Social media exploded with reactions. This wasn't just an attack, it was a declaration of war. Solo Sikoa had announced his intentions in the most violent way possible, and Carmelo Hayes, the confident, talented, seemingly untouchable United States champion, had just been exposed as human, as vulnerable, as someone who could be hurt. In the days that followed, the wrestling world couldn't stop talking about what happened. Analysts broke down every moment of the attack, discussing Solo's strategy, questioning whether Carmelo could recover mentally from such a brutal assault. Fans debated whether Hayes had underestimated Solo, whether his confidence had become arrogance, whether he was truly ready to face someone as ruthless and experienced as the enforcer of the bloodline. Carmelo himself was shown backstage in subsequent segments, clearly affected by what happened but refusing to show weakness. He would be caught on camera looking over his shoulder, jumping slightly at unexpected sounds, the psychological warfare already taking its toll. But he wouldn't give up the championship without a fight. He couldn't. His entire identity was wrapped up in being him, in being the best, in holding that gold and proving he deserved to be at the top of WWE. To surrender now would mean admitting that Solo had broken him, and Carmelo Hayes doesn't break. But the question lingered, could he withstand the storm that was coming? Solo, meanwhile, continued his silent campaign of intimidation. He would appear during other matches, sitting at ringside, not interfering, just watching. His presence alone was enough to unsettle everyone in the arena. He was sending a message to the entire roster. The United States Championship was his objective, but anyone who got in his way would suffer the same fate as Carmelo. He was patient, methodical, waiting for WWE management to make the match official, but making it clear through his actions that it was only a matter of time. The build to their inevitable championship match became one of the most compelling stories in WWE. It wasn't just about the title. It was about two completely different philosophies colliding. Carmelo represented the new generation, the athletes who combined incredible in-ring ability with marketing savvy and personal branding. Solo represented old-school intimidation, the belief that violence and dominance are the truest forms of communication in professional wrestling. One man wanted to entertain while winning. The other simply wanted to conquer. Backstage interviews with both competitors revealed the depth of this rivalry. When asked about the attack, Carmelo would try to maintain his cool, insisting that Solo had caught him by surprise but wouldn't be able to do it again in an official match. You could hear the slight tremor in his voice though, the barely concealed anger and fear mixing together. He would talk about how he'd been studying Solo's matches, looking for weaknesses, preparing for the power and brutality he knew was coming. But there was a new edge to Carmelo now, a hardness that hadn't been there before. The attack had changed him, stripped away some of the playfulness and replaced it with grim determination. Solo's interviews, when he bothered to do them, were terrifyingly simple. He would stare directly into the camera and say things like, "The United States Championship is mine. Carmelo Hayes is just holding it for me." There was no bravado, no trash talk, just statements of fact delivered with absolute certainty. When asked if he regretted the brutal attack, Solo would simply shake his head. Regret was a foreign concept to him. He did what needed to be done. He always does what needs to be done. The WWE Universe was split in their reactions. Carmelo had his supporters, fans who appreciated his talent and wanted to see him overcome this challenge, prove that skill could triumph over brute force. But Solo had his admirers too, people who respected his no-nonsense approach, who appreciated a wrestler who let his actions speak louder than words. The upcoming championship match was being positioned as one of the most significant United States Championship defenses in recent memory. When the match was finally made official, the announcement came with stipulations. WWE management wanted to ensure this rivalry reached a definitive conclusion, so they scheduled it as a no disqualification, no countout match. Anything goes. No rules to hide behind. No way to escape. One man would leave with the championship, and the other would leave broken. Carmelo's response to the stipulation was telling. He smiled, but it wasn't his usual confident grin. It was something darker, more determined. He knew what WWE management was doing, forcing him to meet Solo on the most dangerous possible terms. But he wasn't backing down. He couldn't. His entire career, his entire identity depended on proving he could hang with anyone under any circumstances. Solo's response was even more chilling. He simply nodded when informed of the stipulation, like he'd expected nothing less, like he'd already been planning for exactly this scenario. The hype packages WWE produced for the match were absolutely phenomenal. They showed Carmelo's highlight reel of incredible athletic moves, his championship victories, his rise to prominence. Then they would cut to Solo destroying opponents, the Samoan spike knocking people unconscious, the intimidating presence that had been part of the Bloodline's dominance. The contrast was stark and effective, painting the picture of an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, youth and athleticism versus experience and brutality. Fan predictions were all over the place. Some believed Carmelo's speed would be his saving grace, that he could use hit-and-run tactics to wear Solo down over time. Others thought Solo would simply overwhelm Hayes with power moves, that the championship would change hands through sheer dominance. Wrestling podcasters debated strategy, discussing whether Carmelo should use weapons since it was no disqualification, or if that would play into Solo's hands by making the match even more violent. The night of the match arrived with an electricity in the air that was palpable. The arena was packed, the crowd buzzing with anticipation. When Carmelo's music hit, the reaction was massive. He walked to the ring with his championship held high, playing to the crowd, trying to project confidence. But if you looked closely, you could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept scanning the entrance ramp, anticipating Solo's arrival. He entered the ring and waited, pacing back and forth, staying loose, mentally preparing for the war ahead. And then Solo's music hit. The atmosphere shifted immediately. The enforcer walked out with purpose, his eyes locked on the ring, on Carmelo, on that championship. He wasn't playing to the crowd. He barely acknowledged their existence. This was business. He climbed into the ring, and the referee held up the United States Championship, showing both competitors and the world what was at stake. The bell rang, and Carmelo exploded out of his corner with a desperation born from weeks of psychological torture. He hit Solo with everything, a jumping knee strike, rapid-fire punches, a dropkick that actually backed the bigger man into the ropes. Carmelo was fighting with an intensity we'd rarely seen from him, channeling all his anger and fear into offensive fury. He springboarded off the ropes with a crossbody that took Solo down, and for a moment, just a moment, it looked like Carmelo's strategy might work. But Solo powered out of the pin at one, throwing Carmelo off him with such force that Hayes flew halfway across the ring. The message was clear, it's going to take a lot more than that. What followed was an absolute war. Carmelo used his speed and agility to stay mobile, hitting Solo with strikes from different angles, using the ring environment to his advantage. He drop-kicked Solo into the steel steps at one point, then followed up with a suicide dive that crashed both men into the barricade. The crowd was going insane, cheering every risk Carmelo took, impressed by his willingness to put his body on the line. But Solo absorbed the punishment and kept coming. Every time Carmelo thought he'd created separation, Solo would be right there, grabbing him, cutting off his escape. A massive headbutt busted Carmelo open, blood streaming down his face, adding a crimson mask to the champion's determined expression. Solo introduced weapons, throwing chairs into the ring, setting up a table in the corner. This was his element, the violence and chaos that he thrived in. Carmelo fought back with incredible heart, hitting a code red onto a steel chair that had the entire arena on their feet thinking it might be over.